for me to see the play take shape on stage before me. And there are so many people who have helped to make it responsible. I could list all those people that I really need to thank individually, but it would add a third act to a play that's already long enough. So I won't do that. I'll just express a general, sincere thank you to those people. Apologize for the fact that we don't have an auditorium that seats 1,000 people. Maybe someday we will have. I think we deserve one. I hope that you have a very good show. Enjoy what you're watching as much as we enjoy putting it on for you. I have only one request to ask of you, and it hardly seems a fair request, but what we do is we do make some entrances through aisles. So if you can clear aisle spaces as much as possible so that at least one person can walk through it would be nice. Not only for our play, but also to satisfy the fire inspection people and so forth. If some of you want to fill in down here, you may not see quite as well with the space as long as we can walk through. Also, if you can find a spot over here, as long as we can walk through, that's okay if some of you want to move down there. So again, I apologize for our theater. I hope that you enjoy the show.
In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And the earth was without form and void. And darkness was upon the face of the deep. And God said, "Let there be light." And there was light. And God called the light day. And the darkness he called night. And God said, "Let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters." And God called the dry land earth. And the gathering together of the water he called seas. And God said, "Let the earth bring forth grass, and herbs yielding seed, and the fruit tree yielding fruit after his kind." And God said, "Let the waters bring forth abundantly the moving creature that hath life, and fowl that may fly above the earth." And God said, "Let the earth bring forth the living creature after his kind, cattle and creeping things, and beasts of the earth after his kind."
God created man in his own image.
The image of God created he him.
Male
In the beginning, there was a land of the Potawatomi Indians, a land which became part of the territory of Wisconsin, a state in 1848.
In the beginning, there was a county.
A finger of land.
Between two waters,
Door.
Death's Door.
Porte more.
Door County. In the beginning.
in the beginning,
In the beginning.
In the beginning, there came families.
Johnson.
Peterson,
Michelson.
Boynton. Pop. Church.
Olson.
Nelson,
Hill.
Sequence. Dobner.
Roberts.
Collins,
Gardens.
Godchuk. Thorpe. Carmody. In the beginning, families lived off the land.
Farming.
And the water.
fishing,
And the trees.
Lumbering.
Growing fruit.
tapping sugar maples,
Log bones rising from the trees they fell.
In the beginning came the naming of the names.
Gibraltar, after the rocky bluff resembling southern Spain's rock of Gibraltar.
Sister Bay, after the big and the little sister.
Egg Harbor, after its shape,
Or perhaps from the eggs of many gulls that flock there every spring.
Or was it from the famous egg fight between two rival boats?
Ellison Bay, Father John Murray Larson.
Gill's Rock, once Hedgehog Harbor, with a porcupine that Jew National Lovejoy Sloop.
He named for Elias Gill.
Fish Creek, made by Increase Claflin for the fish-filled waters. The creek being the village.
Bailey's Harbor, after Captain Bailey who, in 1848, sought shelter in that harbor during a storm.
And Ephraim, a name which pleased the Moravian forefathers of that village.
In the beginning,
What was it like in the beginning?
Door County, 1862.
A virtual wilderness.
Population 3,000.
2/3 farmers,
Remainder fishermen.
Population center, Washington Island.
Assessed county value $395,000.
a single church in Northern Door, the Moravian Church at Ephraim.
25 school districts, some close to the lack of teachers.
A road running from Sturgeon Bay to Egg Harbor.
Famed for 27 mud holes, some a half mile long.
A wilderness.
In the beginning, the churches were formed.
Ephraim Moravian Church, founded in 1853, the oldest in Door County.
Sister Bay Baptist Church, organized 1877.
St. John the Baptist Catholic Church, 1878, Egg Harbor.
Emmanuel Lutheran Church, 1892, Bailey's Harbor.
Sister Bay Zion Lutheran Church, organized by Swedish settlers in 1878.
Bethany Lutheran Church, 1882, Ephraim.
Sister Bay Moravian Church, organized 1896.
In the beginning, the schools were open, one-room structures that dotted the peninsula.
Pershing,
North Bay,
Newport,
Wildwood, Appleport, Ephraim,
Sister Bay,
Fish Creek,
Juddville,
Egg Harbor, Ellison Bay, Bailey's Harbor,
Liberty,
Raleigh's Bay,
Chambers Island.
and in 1918, a high school here at Fish Creek.
Go, Gibraltar, go!
And, unfortunately, in the beginning there was tragedy.
1912, a conflagration nearly wiped out the Saturday Bay business district.
1903, steamer Hacker founders on Green Island during a terrific squall while on their way to Egg Harbor. 11 local people lost their lives. 8 others were rescued by a steamer after floating about on the wreckage all night.
1876. No trace has yet been discovered of the missing child in Egg Harbor. It is a most mysterious affair. If the little one had been carried off by a wild beast, some traces of it surely would have been found. It is impossible to believe that a child could disappear in the way this one has, and its loss will be forever shrouded in mystery.
And in the beginning
There was war.
The Civil War. For a tiny county numbering less than 300 persons, their county did its part in sending 167 men, of whom 17 died, 17 were wounded, and 6 became prisoners of the Confederacy. World War I, November 8, 1918. Many Door County men will be sent to southern camps, and the local board has been ordered to furnish nearly 100 soldiers within a 5-day period. The authorities request that no public demonstration be held when the men leave, as the men are in better spirits if it is not done.
World War II, December 12, 1941. Door County's first contingent of selectees since the outbreak of war will report to Madison next Wednesday, December 17th.
in the beginning.
In the beginning,
In the beginning.
In the beginning there was a wilderness.
This county called Door.
And then a garden.
Nurtured,
By the farmers.
and the fishermen,
And the wilderness.
and the shopkeepers, and then attracted by the garden,
and the wilderness which remained,
In the artists.
and the craftsmen,
and the tourists,
and the summer residents,
And the retired folks.
And the innkeepers.
And the restaurateurs.
and the keepers of the little shops.
And everywhere there was a remembrance and a reverence.
For the beginning.
for the beginning.
For the beginning.
And God saw everything that he had made, and behold, it was still very good.
1844, I settled at Fish Creek. First person to do so. I fished, I trapped, but like Adam, it fell to me, Increase Claflin, the naming of the names. Horseshoe Bay, because one of my horses lost a shoe there. Egg Harbor, because I found a nest of duck eggs. Hat Island, because of its shape. Strawberry Islands, because of the berries. Eagle Island, because I found an eagle's nest there. Sister Islands, because they looked alike. Chambers Island, after Captain Chambers of the Black Hawk War. Up until 1847, my house was the only house between Washington Island and Sturgeon Bay. It was there that I raised my 3 sons and 3 daughters. And according to Luke, Jesus, being full of the Holy Ghost, was led by the Spirit into the wilderness. In 1867, at the age of 83, I died. God's name be praised.
My name is Chief Simon Mortes, leader of the Potawatomi Indians. Honor my spirit, white men they erect a totem, and then play games around my sacred burial place. Take sticks and hit little white balls, chasing them. I do not understand the white man or their strange ways. It is better that I dead.
In the early days, when I was first Mrs. Stephen Norton, a young bride, I was many times alone in the cabin while Stephen was at work in the fields. There were Indians about in those times, but I had been told they were friendly, as long as they were not crossed. Still, I was fearful of them. One day, when I was alone, a large stalwart Indian man came to the door. I was terrified. What should I do? He shouted that he wanted a knife to scalp me with, but then I remembered the warning. The Indians are friendly as long as they are not crossed. Against my better judgment, with hands that shook, I gave him the knife and then said a silent prayer, preparing for the worst. The Indian took the knife, sat on the doorstep, and moved a large sliver with his foot. Handing the knife back to me, he grunted, "Thank you," and was on his way, leaving me alone, my heart pounding with grief.
Yes, there are Indians in York County. I remember when I was a young girl before I became Mrs. J. Rogers, an Indian man put his hard hand on my mother's shoulder and demanded salt. I'm telling you, I was my husband's family used to see Indians in the Rowley area too, before they left for a reservation in Minnesota. One old Indian, Old Lewis, came back to visit, and he borrowed a boat from my husband when he was just a boy. Later, when he returned the boat, he said, "Jay, you good boy, but all spoiled here. No deer, no fish anymore. All gone." What if old Lewis were to come back today? Missionaries tried to convert the Indians, and at one point a large cross stood in Rowley's Bay. Jay took our little infield over to see when he was just a boy. I wonder if anything remains of that cross, or has it gone the way of Lewis's fish and deer?
1865, I, Gunnar Anderson, along with my father, left Norway to come to the United States. I left to escape military conscription to the Swedish Army. We settled near Ypres to be near relatives of ours who had previously emigrated to this country. After I had been here for a while, I contracted to buy 108 acres of land, good timberland along Little Sister Bay. The contract read, because I had no cash, the contract read, I was to pay 550 bushels of potatoes. All the small and rotten potatoes would be thrown away. The contract was for 3 years. The potatoes did not fail. My descendants built Little Sister Resort there. No small potatoes.
In 1859, Peter Peterson and I, Aslog Anderson, purchased about 150 acres of land from the Moravian settlers at Ypres. In return, we promised to build a large pier from which the vessels could take their cargo and on which the people of Ypres could store their cordwood and logs free of charge until called for by the ships. Our pier became known as the famous Anderson Dock, a vital part of the economy of northern Door County for years. A portal for settlers, food and household supplies, farm machinery, and later, tourists. We helped others by helping ourselves. The free enterprise system, America.
My father, Porte Hutchinson, single-handedly built the Ebenezer. He had tried farming, but low prices, droughts, and grasshoppers discouraged him. As a boy in Norway, sailing had always been a way of life. In America, he had a dream of building a vessel and trying to earn his living on the lake. One day, he went to work taking logs out of the field. The next winter, he began building a boat on the hills north of Evergreen Beach in Ypres. For the brands of the vessel, he chose tamarack roots, which had grown in the shade he required. Father had no blueprints or engineering calculations, but he did have an old sailor's knowledge and a good eye for the clear lines. Many people saw the boat as Fordo's folly. How will he ever get that big boat down to the water? And Father worked on ignoring them. One early spring morning, Father announced, "Today, Dina, the Ebenezer will take her first dip into Green Bay." It was such an exciting event that half the village was there to watch the boat glide down the hill. It was about 3 in the afternoon when the boat made its final jump into the Green Bay. We were proud of Father's boat, and we enjoyed many lovely trips on it, sailing to Green Bay, Marinette, Sheboygan, when Father wasn't using the boat for business. Once 9 sailing vessels were owned by the citizens of Ypres. All of the captains would try to do it for Sunday. So every Sunday morning, we would contemplate in the harbor and thank the Lord that we were all safe at home once again. Sometimes I can still hear the sound of Father's hammering, ringing up the hill, working on the Ebenezer.
The farmers' wives in the German settlement east of Ypres brought in their produce, butter, eggs, dried peas, and exchanged them for tobacco for their husbands and other household supplies. I, in turn, shipped the farm produce on the schooner the Ebenezer, where I bartered for dry goods to retail in my store. In this game of barter, every ounce counted. One day, an enraged German woman came into my store.
Ah! Ah! His stone! His stone! Sister Bay and back. So I'd take some hay along in case they got hungry. Well, one day I was in town, and I bought a can of gasoline. Some of it slopped out on the hay as the wagon jolted up and down on the way home. And I hated to waste the hay, so I fed it to old Ned and Dick anyway. They didn't seem to mind. They chomped it down, but it did make them a little gassy, though. And early the next morning, I was out in the barn lighting my pipe, just as old Ned was letting wind. And I was thrown clean out of the barn.
6.11 is what I paid for Allison Bay in 1859. Lots 1, 2, and 3, Section 15, Liberty Road. It was a good investment, short property. 4 and stony, 40 acres, I had purchased in Ephraim in 1855. It was not such a good buy. Land is the secret. I lived to be 85, and I owned 1,000 acres for every year that I lived. Allison Bay, they named after me, John Bennett Allison, without even telling me. One day I looked at the government map and found that 2 years earlier, government surveyors had named the village after me, Allison Bay. Allison Bay. My printed business cards for Portwood Posts and Poles gave my address as Ephraim. I crossed it out on each one and wrote in with the proud hand, Allison Bay.
I hated the congestion of civilization and suffocated at the thought of neighbors. First in 1836, I left the bustle of Fort Howard for the serene quiet of Sturgeon Bay. Then I saw chimney smoke rising above the trees on the horizon and knew I had been pursued by pioneers. So I headed north up the peninsula, thinking I'd find peace at the very tip. No, sir. One day I saw the bobbing boat of a fisherman who was living on Detroit Island. So I headed round and down the other side of the peninsula until I came to a little cove of Lake Michigan. Land dipping deep into the reeds and rushes, rich in mink and mushrooms, marsh marigold and balsam. The place is fine and deep to the North Pole. It's Indian sunrise at 2 morning. I built a cabin right there on the shore, ate venison and fish, delicious solitude, and died enjoying my own company. They named the place Rowley's Bay after me, Peter Rowley.
When my older cousin Sven came to this country from Sweden, he couldn't speak one word of English. Since I couldn't speak a word of Swedish, my folks decided to send the both of us up from Chicago to work together on a farm that they had bought near Sister Bay, hoping that by the end of the summer, Sven could speak English just as good as I could. Well, the summer finally ended, and my folks came up to the farm, anxious to hear Sven speak English. When they arrived, they asked Sven, "Say something, Sven." Sven looks up, "Ursäkta mig, men jag talar inte engelska." They were astonished. They looked at me. "How can this be?" they said. And I answered them, "Jag talar inte engelska heller."
stones, boulders and pebbles. Every single year my fields you'll travel. On the fields of the mainland, farmers fence with wire, but we have more rocks than our fences require. Thanks to the glaciers flying here from the north, we don't have to wish for rocks to form. Fossils and arrowheads building foundations, we've got more rocks than mountain plantations. Pebbles and boulders, big rocks and stones. If the bank would just take them as collateral on loans. We need a big family to keep the rock big, but hitch up the stone mold and all our kids get sick. On the prairies of Wisconsin, farmers plant with bees. On the northern North Peninsula, we blast you with trees. Big rocks and stones, pebbles and boulders, picking them up makes us feel a year older. Boulders and pebbles, big stones and rocks, we sell them wholesale to those who make docks. Build your house on rock was a message from God. But for our farms we'd rather have sod. Yes, for our farms we'd rather have sod, sod, sod. Flint rock and sandstone, limestone and granite. Waiting night and night until we can stand it. Flint rock and sandstone, limestone and granite. We're so sick of rocks, we no longer can stand it.
Man gets used to live without women, and he's mighty comfortable. Then, one of them comes around, he can get mighty comfortable. Lord wants to run off to the woods like a jackrabbit. One time I didn't. Snapped with gal, gnawed away at my heart. Like them porcupines did my snoot. Couldn't launch my boat that spring. Water that fell so much during the winter. Folks called the Bay Hedgehog after that. Well, me, bachelor Lovejoy.
My name is Elias Bill. I came to Hedgehog Harbor back in the early 70s.
amply supplied with rock. In honor of me, they named the place Gill's Rock. You know, some people never did like it when others get ahead. From what I hear, they still don't.
In 1856, I settled in Kentucky Harbor, the first white man to do so. When Bachelor Love George boat was tossed upon the shore by the winter ice, he despaired of ever getting it back into the water. Until I lifted it up, for I was a man of prodigious strength. I once carried a 450-pound barrel of flour on my back 3 miles without stopping to rest. My beard was so thick, man could grab a hold and hang on while I walked around the room. My shoes are so big, I could never find shoes big enough. So I had to wear mine. All fun and ha! Added rattle.
Does the wind always blow this way in Door County? No. Sometimes it blows this way.
Mission? I had a mission. Like Moses, I, Pastor Andrew M. Iverson, led a band of 26 of the faithful from Fort Howard, where we parted company with Otto Tank, into the wilderness, arriving at Eagle Island on August 1st, 1850. In 1853, the Ephraim Moravian Church was founded, and I became the first pastor, serving a 14-year tenure. Moses died once he had led his people into the promised land, but I continued to lead, embarking on missions to seek out the faithful, sometimes as far away as Chicago. Once I covered 70 miles on skis in the cold of winter. Sometimes I sought out converts using the missionary ship, the Dove. Glory be to God in the highest, and peace be to his faithful.
First year we were here, we grew huge crops of potatoes. And with the fish and game we harvested, we made it easily through the winter. But 1857 was different. The entire crop, the whole district was a failure. The men went with Pastor Iverson, and my husband Oliver took a fishing boat to Green Bay, and there met with a certain Mr. Gray and Son. They were to purchase cedar fence posts in exchange for merchandise and provisions. Each man in Ephraim made a contract with this firm, and each received 1/3
As I told my mother, I'd cross 1,000 miles of swamp, jumping from log to log, hump to hump, and sometimes wading through waist deep water. Thank goodness Alan had to make the trip once a month. Of course, it took me almost a month.
I was proprietress in the Anderson Hotel in Newport. One day, I had unexpected guests arrive at the hotel, and I worried about my supply of meat. I had ordered more the day before, sending off postcards in the mail. But for the life of me, I cannot remember how much. To relieve my mind, I walked over to the post office and asked to be answered the postcard.
About 50 pounds, Tilly.
He said, my mind was relieved.
Only a summer cold, muchacha. Only a summer cold, my mother murmured, smoothing my hair before she returned to the orchard. Only a cold, caught from sleeping in a tent in the chilly northern summer breeze. But I knew better, as did my parents. Their faces furrowed with care, while they milked the red cherries from the green grass of the orchard. They carried Mama from her grave, overcome with despair at leaving me behind in the frozen bosom of the earth. But I stayed warm, Mama, close to the heart of God. And every spring, the orchard bloom around me. A glorious promise, Mama, a glorious promise.
The terrible swift sword of God swept in 1880, claiming many of his chosen in the criteria of flame. Mr. Dodner and I lost 3 of our children. It was the dead of winter. And along with my tears of grief, I shed tears of worry. How would we provide for them a decent burial? George told me not to worry. He put our 4 babies on the sleigh and set off across the frozen water of Merritt Bay, arriving safely at Yellowstone Bay Cemetery. There, ashes to ashes, they will return to God, sleep safely in the bosom of their Maker. But oh, I still miss
Did they ever find what happened to my child? I could rest more easily if I knew. She was only 4 at the time of playing back of our house. When I went to call her in for a nap, she was gone. At first we thought she had wandered into the woods and searched until dark. I put a candle in the window and sat up all night, hoping she'd follow the light home. All the next day, the entire community searched, finding nothing. The ladies met for prayer. Still nothing. Was she stolen by Indians? Did she fall into the bay? Was she carried off by a wild animal?
USA, Door County, entering this world on October 29, 1850. However, I'm not remembered for myself, but rather for my connections. I reach back to my Uncle Asa Thorpe, the founder of Fish Creek, and into the future to my grandson Duncan Thorpe, the writer. I see myself as merely a link in the great chain of humanity.
Yes, sir. We have some rich soil down in Harbor Way. I remember one summer, a boy climbed up a corn stalk that was growing so high, I thought he would starve to death if I had gagged my husband and shit this or something.
Fire started at my store around midnight. I might have been the only one wiped out in Sister Bay if that wind hadn't been blowing so hard out of the north. People got there as soon as they could, formed a bucket brigade. There wasn't any use. Flames leapt into the sky till my store looked like it sat at the very gates of hell. And the people of the village, fire flickering in their faces, looked like Dante's lost souls. Frank Smith's place was the next to go, that wood giving into the wind-whipped flames like it was just so much paper. Those men with buckets might just as well have been old women with thimbles. Then the porch of Henry Fleck's hotel caught fire, and in an instant it was a mass of flame from top to bottom. The heat was so great we couldn't get close enough to even try to douse it with water. We just stood there. Watched the most magnificent building in town go up in smoke. Then the ice house behind the hotel went. And Mrs. Bunder's general store, which burned so fast that they barely got the mail out of the post office in the store. None of her possessions. Andrew Razor's house burned, and so did my house. I, Louis Lerner here, was the only one to suffer a double dose of this destruction that evening. Worst of it was that not a solitary thing was saved from any of the places that burned that night. Everyone was so intent on saving their own property, their own skin. But at least no one was hurt. Next day, hundreds of tourists came into town as soon as it was light out, to take pictures to remember their vacation in 1912. Pictures. I had packed up and left because I had nothing left to pack. And there was a lot of accounts that'd be mad as hornets had I gone. So I stayed.
January 1st, 1864, was the coldest day in Door County history. I'd spent the Christmas holidays visiting my sweetheart on Washington Island, and on December 30th, I started across the door, homeward bound in a flat-bottomed skiff. I wove my way through broken ice floes until near Plum Island, where I struck a large field of thick ice. With difficulty, I made a landing on Plum Island, hoping the wind would later turn passage to Maine. I found the shell of an abandoned fishing hut and made a fitful fire. I moved to better shelter, a ruined lighthouse. With my last match, I started a roaring fire. Unfortunately, the chimney was full of snow, which melted, slid down, and stickers to flames. I spent that night without heat, sleep, or food, moving stones and rocks about to exercise and keep warm. When daylight finally arrived, I tried to return by boat to Washington Island. I rode for a quarter of a mile until I encountered solid ice and no further progress. So I took the seats of the skiff, and with ropes I fashioned rude snowshoes to my feet. First few steps were satisfactory.
Then I plunged into the icy water, saved from certain death only by the pole I was carrying. I managed to extricate myself and return to the boat. My wet clothing froze into an armor of ice. By something about the skiff, I managed to return circulation to my limbs. For my next attempt, I lay on two boards and tried to pull myself snake fashion across the ice to Detroit Island. I had not gone far when the ice broke and I again was plunged into the water and carried underneath the ice by the current. After an interminable struggle against the current and the ice, I managed to regain the surface through the hole I had fallen into. This time I stayed in the freezing water. By using my ice-encased arms and hands as sledgehammers, I smashed the ice and slowly moved forward. Like an animated iceberg, half swimming, half crawling by the helps of my elbows. For hours I struggled in the 40-degree below zero cold, until late afternoon when I reached Detroit Island. Although my legs and hands were frozen and senseless, I managed to make it by nightfall to the house of a fisherman who took me in. But all is not over. Ahead there lay months of bitter suffering. My fingers dropped off. The flesh on my legs peeled away to the point where they had to amputate my legs below the knees. But I survived. Through the will of God, my will of iron, I had survived. Now a ferry boat named after me, the Robert Noble, crosses death's door daily in all kinds of weather with impunity.
Sun shining down, warming the ground.
Snow melting.
Snow melting.
Snow melting, snow melting.
Rip, drop.
Rip, drop. Sun shining down, warming the ground. This is the time when the girl thinks of love.
Sweet thoughts. Sweet thoughts.
Sweet thoughts, sweet thoughts. Love, love,
shall gather you a bouquet.
We shall gather.
Okay.
Pick,
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 pick, pick, pick.
pick, pick,
Door County flowers.
Call me Long John hereabouts. 'Cause I stood 6'5" in my stocking feet. Yep. The other men, they'd go out my team on the ice to fish. I'd walk way out past the island. One day I walked into Hoyt's general store down there. It's where Beach Road Market is today. There were 5 dozen eggs sitting on the counter. Hoyt bet me $5 I couldn't eat them. I did. Raw. Shells and all. Took the spoon, make a quart of whiskey, went to family home, and a can of milk, loaf of bread, went to sleep, woke up the next day feeling 55.
Sure, we get some bad weather around here. Once back in the 1880s, they fished the same hole in the ice for 3 winters in a row. And the fogging off the bay gets bad too. One fish into a roof and heavy fog, so thick they were 3 feet up in the air beyond the pitch before you realize they're mistake. Sure, we get some bad weather.
Owen Cassidy here. In the old days, I used to work in the stone quarry for $1 a day. It was hard, back-breaking labor. Sure, I made a neat $1,000 that first year.
This here is Charlie Collins. We had a kitchen stove, the draft so strong that my mother had to put a wood rug in front of it. So when
It was 48, I remember, and I had a cargo of young folk from out east, hoping to make a new life for themselves. Well, they were scared half to death that their new life was going to end before it even began, when we got caught in a storm on the lake, far from the port of Milwaukee. Rather than trying to make it through those churning and thrashing waves, I headed for land and found a harbor to put into. We waited out the storm for days, wondering at the vastness of the hard wood and the white pine, marveling at the fine building stone. I took samples to Milwaukee once we set sail again. My. It's a peculiar thing. I was only looking for a snug harbor, any port in the storm, you might say, and then they go and name it after me, Captain Bailey. Bailey's Harbor. Like it was mine.
I, Allenson Sweet, was a man of vision whose time never came. Captain Bailey, piloting one of the vessels, should be my own. When he returned from Door County with samples of stone and wood, well, it was a golden opportunity, and I prospered. I went to Madison, persuaded the state legislature to make Door a separate county. I also persuaded them to make Bailey's Harbor county seat, which I thought was the best site, the rest of the county being steep, inaccessible cliffs. As a name for my metropolis, I chose Gibraltar. Gibraltar because of the stone and rocks. Then I petitioned the federal government to erect a lighthouse to guide mariners to the docks of my city. However, best laid schemes of mice and men have to go away, as the poet says. My sawmill burned, my pier went to ruin, my cottages crumbled into decay, and they moved the damn county seat to Sturgeon Bay. Ironically, the lighthouse
that deserted port, and people insisted on calling after when I happened to elect captain, Bailey's Harbor. When I died in 1890, the newspaper called me, Moses Kilgore, an unwitting Christian for relieving the distressed, feeding the hungry, giving drink to those who thirsted, and ministering to the afflicted. If I was a Christian, it was indeed unwitting. For I never darkened the doors of a church. Well, the closest I came to that was giving rides, food, and lodging to the brimstone peddlers who came through our little town. The newspaper also said that I was considered one of the most energetic and efficient men of the county for procuring public improvement. Now that I like. I came to Bailey's Harbor in 1860 from Maine by way of Racine and Port Washington. And I built a pier to conduct business in dry goods and other commodities on the spot where Nelson's hardware store now stands. My house stood where the town hall and library do now. I was elected to many offices. Why, in 1863 alone, I held the office of supervisor, treasurer, assessor, and justice of the peace. 3 years later, I began a stagecoach service between Ellison Bay and Green Bay. One of my personal projects was to build a road between Bailey's Harbor and Sturgeon Bay. I personally staked out our Highway 57 through the swamps and the woods, and I was elected to the state legislature. Another one of my projects was to supervise the building of the road between Bailey's Harbor and Sister Bay. I was proud of Bailey's Harbor. When excursion boats docked there, I would give folks a ride around town in my oxen and wagon. I'm still proud of Bailey's Harbor and of my great-granddaughter, who was born after I died, still lives there, Olivia.
Moses Kilgore was my friend. He and I drank many a beer together in my hotel. One day over a brew, we decided the usual way of conducting a funeral was totally unsatisfactory. We decided that whoever should receive the other one is dead should hire a brass band to do him honor. Well, Moses died before I did. True to my word, I, Adam Hendricks, hired a brass band and did him up beautifully.
changed my garage in Elsie Bay to a gift shop or a condominium yet?
Now, you're trying to know kinderleicht. Ich war Hedwig Pyle. Und I was a meal order bride from Deutschland, Germany. And I lived in Venice Harbor all my life. Just once when I got mad at my husband, and he wouldn't buy a farm for me. So I went to move up, and I lived there for a while. And I mean, good living for myself. I worked hard. I always worked hard. And I always wanted my children to work hard. When my mom Otto to work hard. And I loved my garden. I loved my blooming in my garden. And I planted many blooming for Mrs. Boynton in Birkland Chapel. And she loved my blooming too. I was a midwife. And I worked very hard. And I was a poet too. And I just loved life. And I loved the space of life.
I'm Grandma Honold. Grandma Honold loved me. Mother of 14 children. Grandmother of 43 children. Great-grandmother of 118 children. Great-great-grandmother of 48 children. When I was born, Ulysses S. Grant was president. And when I died, this country was led by Ronald Reagan. I married my husband Charles in 1895, and in 1898 we moved to a hard rock pile in Jackson, Georgia. I cleared fields, shelled corn, churned butter in gardens, while tending children, cattle, and donkeys. And then suddenly, I was 108. Living as long as I have, there is little left to say. Your life speaks for itself.
Yeah, I'm a box farmer. I bet you saw that again. You can't get rid of me yet. Because I only died. I didn't vanish into thin air. It was kind of like the old man who undertaker believed. I guess we they're not. Come talk to me later when it's not too many folks around. Well, now, for a while there, I thought I lived good. Followed my old medicine, eating right, shot a day just for a time. But I died just like everyone else. Of course, they named the medical center after me, so I live on to that. Due to thousands of babies I helped into this world. You know, I reckon I was the only doctor in the nation who still made house calls. Well, here I am, still leaving a warm bed, making one more house call.
Irishman, Dennis Rapp.
I found the young Norwegian, Johannes Buchan,
Jan Buck in America.
to be a good worker, a good fishing partner, and a good friend. But he did not speak English, and I played a practical joke on him. I showed him an old newspaper and told him it read that a law had been passed requiring all immigrants who had not become citizens to present themselves to the dearest sheriff on Valentine's Day.
I did. It was 65 miles to Green Bay on ski in February. It was not funny. So, when Dennis, after planting his spring Irish wheat and scolding me all the while for not keeping my hands shut up and threatening to shoot them if I let him out in the field again, I let Dennis shoot out. He took his rifle and with a wind and shot them one by one.
It was not funny.
He came into my house in a rage, stepping blindly into a trapdoor that I had conveniently left open for him, and plummeted into the basement. I left him there overnight to cool down a bit, but I let him out in the morning after he promised to be a good boy.
I promised, but I silently vowed revenge. John and his wife, Marie, built a 75-foot schooner by hand, working 3 long years together, sawing lumber with a whipsaw, sewing the sails by hand.
My wife, Marie, made a pennant for the boat out of her wedding dress, and I named the boat after her, the Marie Buck.
John could not spell Marie Buck in English, and he asked me to write the words for the registration, the insurance, and the sign painter. I wrote the married Buck.
Despite my later embarrassment after learning what he had done to me, the married buck was a fine craft, and my sailing venture a success. Eventually, the name was made right, the Marie Buck.
I brought my own dear mother to Chambers Island from Ireland, and we all lived together, one happy family.
And friends to the end.
When I came to this land from Norway in 1877, I thought it as beautiful as a park. Little did I imagine that one day Hans Olsen's farm would be made into a park. I had 107 acres on Shanty Bay, where I enjoyed living by the bluffs on the water. But they decided that everyone should enjoy my land, and I was forced to sell for $3,800. Shanty Bay became Nicolay Bay. My farm became part of Peninsula Park. My brother Anton's farm became part of the park golf course. I moved to a place near Newport, my wife Ingeborg, my son Albert. We talked of making that land into a park.
We were forced to leave our farm, Hans and I, to be made into a park. They tell me for the good of all. But what about the good for us? I thought America got the land of the free. When we moved to Newport, Hans would walk to the lake every Sunday. He would stand and stare at the water. He said he was content, but he died all the same with regret. And
came here to retire, not to die. Nearly 40 years I drove to Door County, almost every weekend during the summer. I spent each week of my vacation in a rented cottage here. Nearly 40 years of loading luggage, first kids and then dogs and cats into the station wagon, then 5 hours with them on the road up here. But it was worth it, my wife and I assured each other at journey's end. Watching the sun set over Eagle Harbor, licking the coals from Wilson's. For 40 years I looked forward to my retirement and the end of those 5-hour Hajiras. But I had expected to retire here, not to die, not to pass away by degrees. Watching the same sun sink with uninspired regularity into the same boring bay. Having coffee daily with the same dull people. Gossip relentlessly about other unimaginative people. How many of you view church services as social occasions? I soon began to anticipate my retirement from this earth as eagerly as I had awaited my retirement from Chicago. Yes, I came up here to retire, not to die. But I died 1,000 times before that final stroke, which made my fitful sleep peaceful.
Harry dragged me to Door County every chance he got, which meant that I spent my life packing and unpacking, preparing meals in unfamiliar kitchens with garage sale cookware, devoting myself to domestic chores while everyone else played. I began to see life as a huge suitcase that never shut. Finally, it closed. My children came of age and left home. Harry retired, and we took that final trip to Door County. At last, I came out of the kitchen, out of the cottage. We went to breakfast at Al's, senior citizen luncheon specials at Wagon Trail, Friday night fish fries at the Viking. Oh, I found the scenery a pleasant backdrop for friendship. I was happy. I was content even after Harry sank into his sullen grave, leaving me behind. My life was no longer in transit. I had arrived.
Much of man's life is spent in search of clearings. Clearings of the mind, clearings of the soul, clearings of space from the body, which bring clearings of the mind and of the soul. I sought such clearings for myself, moving from Denmark, Chicago, Wells, and May, creating clearings for others as I discovered my own. And then back to Birch, bowing the western wind. In the pale pink of a pot, the revelation of himself. And in the curious crowd of the chickpeas boiling. I left behind a legacy of parks. As I designed the plantings and the paths and the statuary, I dreamed of a plan of a finer design. At age 75, I left the city. I moved to Allison Bay. The clearing was here, waiting for me, just as to arrive.
Some people said I did it because I loved them, and I myself denied her for holding them, struggling to maintain the clearing even after his death. But that was not the reason. The body of man is seldom faithful, a frailty which soon passes into this earth. No, I was wedded to his vision, the dream of enduring as the oak tree and the maple shading the stonework of the schoolhouse on the bluffs above the eternal waters of Allison Bay. For the clearing is a far more precious token of a man's love than a man's mere gold.
It was a dream come true. After a decade of fighting noisy traffic, breathing foul air, shuffling through mean
jogging, to drinking beer, playing cards with friends in the long winter evenings. I was happy. I was fulfilled. I was free. And then she left me.
It was a living nightmare. It took me from family and friends and a career that I loved to a house in the woods amidst a sea of strangers and cast me adrift with no purpose but to entertain the children who clung to me in boredom while I fought an even greater boredom within myself. There was no culture here during the long winter months, no place to shop, no intellectual stimulation, only endless cocktails, Tupperware parties, bowling teams, and church services. For 2 years, I cried every day. Then, in the interest of self-preservation, I took the children and left him. I never dreamed that after my death, he would bring me back here again.
Yes, we had our social welfare programs back in the early days. Every year, the Liberty Grove town meeting, money was raised for the poor fund to help the town destitute. Poor family was usually given $5 per week. If there's a needy child one year, and agreed to buy on the fourth meal of the day 2 pounds of sugar and a pound of crackers a week for a period of 20 weeks. When alcohol was a problem, we saw to that too. Town drugs were put on a blacklist, and spoon keepers were business elsewhere. They wanted to keep their liquor license. In all the matters, we needed trustees for our charity, and it died.
I know the family was poor, but it was the norm just the same. She'd come knocking on my door, and in the squeezing voice asked, "Could you borrow me a little flour?" I suppose so. Can I get it for her? "You don't have any lard you can spare?" She'd ask, and I'd give her lard. "I'd be real beholden to you if you could just spare me a pinch of baking powder." She'd ask, "Get it for her." Then she'd go home and make biscuits. Can you believe the God? She'd go home and make biscuits.
Mind you, I'm not saying my neighbor's tight, but when she makes pancakes, they are so thin they have only one side.
Sir P.C. Blakefield here, sir. The wind was southwest and blowing hard when we left the nominee at 5:05 p.m., October 3rd, 1903, on course for Egg Harbor. Just past Green Island, we were struck by a tremendous squall from the south, causing the Hackett to approach to and drop into a trough. Notwithstanding that the engine was worked wide and the steering wheel was held hard over. Inside of 2 minutes, we went to the bottom. The heavy seas bordering her.
Have kitten.
Picked up the course taken by the Hackney at a run Egg Harbor. We zigzagged back and forth, hopes of finding some of the missing passengers and crew. Clinging to a raft, that is. But perhaps the lifeless body of a poor unfortunate was lashed to some frail support. Wreckage was past, but not a thing to indicate that the person was flown for. The cabin drifted ashore at Eagle Bluff. Life preservers, well, they were still on their boats. The friends and relatives who left lost souls asked us to drag to the bodies. But the hole went down in 90 to 100, 120 feet of water. The search was in vain. The water refused to yield up the dead.
It is an outrage, a disgrace, and an outrage. There is absolutely no excuse for companies that send their old hulks out to sail in the lake and bay when they should have long since been condemned. There are several craft just like the Hackley, built some 30 or more years ago and so badly hogged that not even the most unsophisticated landsmen could not help but notice it. And yet these are the craft they send out to carry your friends and mine. I repeat, ladies and gentlemen, it is an outrage. I can only hope that the tragic fate of the Hackley will awaken all of you, every single one of you, to the terrible perils that await you and yours every time you set foot on one of these crazy boats.
When I first came to America, I settled in Marinette. But then I heard that more people from the old country were living in Door County. So in 1860, I bought land near Ephraim and moved my family here. Since I was a child, I have believed in the Lord and in His Word. The people of my new community had a strong need for Christian education. So I, under Sequist, helped establish a Sunday school which met at homes throughout the settlement. Then in 1873, John Anderson arrived from Sweden.
I joined Andrew Sequist in his religious work. Life for the pioneers in northern Door County was hard, but their faith in God was strong. I was a lay preacher and conducted services in people's homes. They were grateful for the freedom they enjoyed as they gathered for their worship. We learned that small churches were being formed throughout the state. A missionary from the Swedish Baptist General Conference of America visited us in 1877 and helped us form our church, the Swedish Baptist Church of Sister Bay. We were without a pastor until 1881 when the Reverend Mortes arrived from Sweden.
Very good. So sing the Morten. This is Amen. I accepted the challenge of a small church in the wilderness. But the living was not enough to support a family, so I farmed as well.
chased hunters and other interlopers from Fox Point at the point of a gun. Yes, I was a teacher at Rowley's Bay when I was a girl, and later at Jackson Porte, running school single-handedly as I run the guest house after Mother died. Yes, I was a nurse for a time. And yes, I once had a lover who was still in the world. No. No, I was not a heroine. But I had a vision, one in which my father's trees were not cut, in which wild flowers bloomed freely, and in which muddays was not disturbed. Oh, I guess I can take my share of the credit for having faced the ridges and Fox Point from the gloom of the developer. But those green discount trees into dollars and acres, into interest and shorelines, into corner tops, have persisted with their vulgar, cinematic misnomer. Day.
Dear friends, we have opened the door. But now has come the time to close it. Remember, the door is not closed forevermore. The key lies in your hearts, and in your minds, and in your hands. And so, dear friends, as we return to the warm and gentle bosom of the earth, we don't say goodbye, but